Laws are changing. People are changing. We're becoming aware of our surroundings and of our skies, probably now more than ever. With the advent of the release of the Tic Tac videos, the government admitting that many of the craft that they're seeing in the sky cannot be identified, something is changing. But this goes back much further than any of us could ever expect. As a matter of fact, with the new laws, the new bills, the new changes that are being made to try to expose the UFO conspiracy, they're now asking to go back to the beginning of January of 1945 and explain the things that have been seen and witnessed since that point. Interesting. Why specifically January 1st of 1945 and on? You may be surprised to find that there are famous UFO sightings and crashes you have never heard about. Some grab all the headlines, some just disappear into the mist, like the craft that are seen. We also are digging and exploring further than we ever have before, uncovering new mysteries, new histories, and things that may rewrite our own understanding of our history and our place in the universe. That's our topics tonight. Aliens on Earth, crashes, and artifacts. Next, when we return to the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader, and this is the Paranormal 60.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney.
He won't float. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
I'd like to welcome our new sponsors to the program, BetterHelp. Get the help that you deserve, BetterHelp. It's where I go for the therapy I seek to help me out of my dark spots, and I know it can help you. Visit BetterHelp.com/P60 today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/P60. All right, folks, we are here. We've got an interesting set of stories to discuss tonight. We've got friends old and new joining us. And I did away with the collared shirts, the vests, and everything today to show my support. Property of Area 51. That's right. Now, I'm going to be up front to those of you listening to this audio podcast only. I'm going to do my very best to keep as much of this theater of the mind so that you can see and understand the things that we're talking about. But I highly encourage you to go check out today's video podcast as well, because we're going to be showing photographs that are astounding, items that have been uncovered that, again, may challenge your paradigms, your understandings of our place on this planet, in our own history, and in the universe. That's in the second half of tonight's show. First half of tonight's show, not nearly as exciting. I'm sorry, folks. It's just the paranormal detective. It's our buddy Greg Lawson.
Wow, man. That was awesome. I've never had a better intro than that.
Hey, I am psyched to have you here with us. And look at this. Super stickers, super chat is open. Nice. Thank you to Lucky Gypsy 13 for getting the ball rolling tonight and helping to support the show. Greg, the other night during news, you read a story about the fact that they're really pushing for this disclosure to get information and a better understanding of the stories that go back. I thought for sure we were going to try to keep it within the last 5 to 10 year window to make it an easier to explain phenomena, something that we could take ownership of. But now lawmakers, congressmen, senators, governors are really pushing to go back further. And we talked about Roswell before Roswell.
That's right.
And this is pretty cool. I do want to share this real quickly as we get started. Greg, as a part of our Paranormal 60 newscast, is one of our fun commentators and news reporters, but he is also a researcher and takes these things very seriously. He has written the book Roswell, the After Action Report, with a foreword by me, Dave Schrader. And you can get copies of this book signed, and we'll point you to that as well. I've got links on today's program guide so that you can find out where you can get the book straight through Amazon, or how you can go to Greg's website to communicate with him and get signed copies. Roswell, we know this story, man, like the back of our hand. 1947, aliens invade Earth. They're stealing our Twinkies. They're taking our women. And finally, we shoot one down with hydro water blasters. It crashes in Roswell. We beat the hell out of the alien. I think I've got the close iteration of how that story went.
Yeah, that's a version.
Yeah, that's a version. It's a crazy one spinning in my brain, but everybody knows the Roswell story. It's fascinating, and there's enough meat on the bone to make it compelling. But as you point out in the book, there's a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of high strangeness.
Right.
I've got to be honest with you, and I know you touch on it, but I just wasn't as familiar with this White Sand story, the Trinity Site sighting and potential crash. You did research on this as part of your other books and a lot of the research that you've done. So set this for us. It's 2 years before Roswell, New Mexico, right?
That's right. Yeah.
We are in what town in New Mexico is White Sands?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. White Sands is a very, very large area. And it's in south central New Mexico. But it's kind of situated between Carrizo and San Antonio, and you get it's large down in Alamogordo.
San Antonio, New Mexico, just to make sure.
San Antonio, New Mexico. Yeah. It's not that big. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very desolate area out there. Obviously they picked that, to practice on blowing up atomic bombs out there. So it's very, very desolate. But you have the, Carrizo, Socorro and San Antonio. That's very close. So I couldn't imagine being in those areas during the experimentation at the Trinity sites, and being there at that time and just having that fallout, just blowing around out there.
Wouldn't you? Although you would kind of want to be there. I mean, look at this is an actual photograph from the White Sands nuclear test site. That would be a spectacle to behold, no doubt. This is an amazing sight to see these atomic bombs go off, creating the massive mushroom clouds. But how weird is it that these people just had no real concept of the danger that they were putting our own people in by testing on our ground?
Well, the crazy part about it is you look back just a few years in 1941 to 1945, we killed 40,000 airmen training, and nobody talks about that. Nobody says
wait. We did what?
Yeah, we had more deaths in training than we did in combat action. So if we said that today, your son is a pilot. Right. Could you imagine if half of his class within the first 2 years was gone, and a quarter of those would have been gone because of training accidents? We would have never put up with that. Yeah.
No.
And so when you look at, it was a different time, man. We were doing whatever we had to do to go over there and try to defeat two Axis powers that were, really pressuring us on both sides. So it was a very, very different time. And that's why I find it interesting, young people today, when they look at the folks that are in their 80s and 90s, and they just don't get it. They're completely different human beings. But yeah.
Unreal. All right. So see, this is what I'm talking about, folks. Even in doing a show where we're going to talk about paranormal, the UFO and alien sightings and incidents, you find out more about this. Disheartening. 40,000 airmen lost just in training sessions alone.
Yeah. And you can look it up. It's online. You can look at, training accidents, how many airmen in the United States, Army Air Corps, the Army Air Forces, and then the Air Force during that time, and how many we lost. It's just staggering, the amount. And I just can't imagine, because they just send you a letter.
Yeah.
Thanking you for your son's service.
And my
Have a
son is
nice day.
a helicopter pilot in but not just any old helicopter. It's not like he's flying in with a MASH helicopter. He's got the big Chinook that he's out there. So thank you for doing what you do out there, son. Let's get into this sighting, this crashed UFO story. Now, we've tested the bomb. We've obviously dropped the bomb by the point that this rolls around, correct?
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This area has got to be replete with negative, energy in many different ways.
You'd think.
Yeah. And it's interesting how many people cite the fact that right after we dropped the bomb, that's when we became interesting to the aliens. That's when the UFOs started really making their appearance. Now, that's one way to look at it. There are certainly many other sightings, and you living in Texas are familiar with some very famous sightings, including one that happened in the 1800s when there were no aircraft.
That's right.
That crashed into Aurora, Texas story. Another one that's just compelling as hell, and an entire town kept silent about what took place there, hid the body, hid the debris. Many of the people involved in picking up the mess died from possible radiation exposure before we were even aware of that. So we're at this point, and it's two San Antonio, Mexico boys, New Mexico boys that are first upon this. Is that correct?
Yeah. So a little kid, his last name was Padilla, and the other one was Baca, Baca. I think I'm saying that right. And yeah, they were on their horses, and they were out on Padilla's ranch, and they were looking for a cow that was calving, and they were worried about where it went. And anyway, so they went and found it and thought everything was okay. And that's when they heard this, or once again, it depends on what version of the story you're coming from, because the people that put stuff online get it wrong sometimes, believe it or not.
What?
Yeah. Sometimes they don't.
Wait, so right after you get done telling me, hey, go look up online 40,000 airmen.
Yeah, 40,000. Yeah. It's 140.
Read it. It's online.
250,000, something like that.
Wow. Yeah, crazy.
So you look at that, and so here's the deal: the circumstances were a little bit different in different versions, but essentially it stayed the same. They're on horseback. They're looking for a cow. Possibly they heard something, felt something impact, saw some smoke. They went over into that area, and they were looking around, and that's when they saw some sort of like the avocado or egg-shaped object. We've all heard that before. There's several stories around the world about these things that are shaped similar to an egg, but they described it as an avocado. And there was a gouge in the earth. The craft is there. It's broken open. They could actually see inside the craft. They could see some beings in there. Said it was they were incredibly skinny. They described their heads shaped very much like a praying mantis type head with large eyes like that, and they were moving in a very strange way. So the kids were saying that they were moving very quickly, trying to get whatever was done that they were trying to do. But their movements, I found this very interesting. Their movements wasn't like a speeding up and going over to the other side and then speeding up and coming back. It was more of a, I'm here, and then it blurs and I'm over there, and then I blur and I'm back over here doing whatever I'm doing. So they had this little experience, whatever it is that they saw. And, I always find it interesting, despite, let's say, these kids were 7 and 9.
Right.
I can remember pretty good when I was that age. I have good memories of when I was that age. And when I was a little bit younger, I have some fuzzier memories. And you could say, when you go back to the house you lived in or a house that you visited, and you go there and you go, wow, I remember it was so much bigger. Because you're a little kid, everything's so big. Well, you have those experiences, but these two guys, they didn't say anything for 50 years. And after they were long retired, they got reconnected and was like, we need to bring this forward. We need to say something about this.
Now, I do want to
and
say
that's
that, my Bigfoot sighting that I talked to you about, I was between 10 to 12 years old when I had that happen. And I can remember that clearly. I remember that more clearly than the last time you and I hung out. I couldn't even tell you the date on the last time you
that
and
was
I hung
because
out.
of the peanut butter whiskey, I think.
Yeah, that very well
Probably.
could be it. But I had some of that when I was a kid too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember that. So it's easy to dismiss it. It's a 7 and a 9-year-old child
Right.
that
Right.
they may not have understood or taken in exactly what they saw, but they had enough wherewithal to know about it. When they connect years later, 50 years later, to discuss
long
this,
time.
they are pretty much on par with each other's memories of this story.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm curious, if we're going to accept this for what it appears to be a UFO sighting, why do you feel that there are so many cases like this where it happened? So this is extraordinary. 1947. This is not
45.
something you see every day. Yeah, 45. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Roswell 47. This is not something you see every day.
No.
How do you just kind of leave the property and forget?
Well, they didn't. No, they
Well,
didn't.
no, but I mean,
Yeah.
what's the right way I want to say this? All right,
Not do
friend
anything, not follow
Yeah,
through, and yeah.
my friend Dre and I were in Colorado at a paranormal conference, and she was walking from her car into the restaurant. And she saw UFO craft in the sky, and she even took photographs of it. She got done, just blown away, walked in to greet a bunch of her friends that are fellow paranormal enthusiasts. Totally escapes her mind. Not till weeks later, when she starts flipping through her phone, does she see the picture. She's like,
Oh yeah.
holy crap, I saw UFOs. Why didn't I tell anybody? And it ends there again for a few years until she finds the pictures again. All right, it's real convenient to say they're somehow blocking our memories, but
Right.
there are a lot of
Yeah.
people that you see something extraordinary. How does it, not that they forgot it, but it's just like it was just, oh, I see that all the time. The garbage bin picking up the garbage. Okay, that's interesting. And you move on. It didn't really stand out to you. So there's no reason to talk about it for 50 years. This is a crashed UFO with strange beings, not like anything they've ever seen.
No.
Are they telling other people in their lives during their lifespan about this experience? Or is it something they've just kept to themselves?
I don't know. In this case, there's not a lot written. Jacques Vallée.
Yeah, Jacques Vallée, yeah.
Jacques Vallée. He did a book on it. Trinity. What is it called? I got it over here. Best kept secret or something like that.
Right.
The interviews that they do on everybody kind of relates back to then, but they're just dissecting what the kids did, not necessarily what happened in that time period, like what's going on. But I have to share with you, I have worked a lot of criminal cases where something really horrible happened to somebody while they were en route to go somewhere, or someone came to visit them and this horrible thing happened, and they just can't wrap their brain around it. And they just have a normal interaction with the people that they're going to see or that was coming to see them. And that's it. And then later they report to the police that this thing happened to them. And you go through the investigation. It's like, well, wait a second. You went and had dinner with so-and-so at this restaurant. You're telling me that happened, and you just got in your car and you drove to the restaurant, you had dinner, and you came back. And then later that night you couldn't sleep. So you called the police and said, hey, this is what happened. But you never said anything to this person. So there might be some more psychological stuff that's going on other than just aliens. It could be just a stress reaction. Like, nobody is going to believe what just happened.
I know when I saw my UFO, I had that experience, that feeling as well. I saw what I saw. I ran towards it. I tried to tell people at the time. And even as I say it, it sounded so insane that I was like, had I not been a radio show host and a personality delving into this, I don't know that I would have talked about it again. Not out of fear, but just out of my, it's 17 years later. I know what I saw. And my brain still just is like, that it does not compute. The math is not there. Something is missing in the translation between what I experienced and what my brain perceived. So I can get it to a degree. But so these boys, they come back, they tell the story. What reinvigorated them? What was the catalyst, do you know, that to get them talking about this again?
Freaking haunted by it. You
Okay.
know, I mean, they
Right.
were, that was something. So after they do that, they go down there and they see it. Everything's hot around it, and they were afraid of this heat. Anyway,
Mhm.
they end up leaving, going back and telling their dad, "Hey, this is what's happening." He's like, "Hey, that's the army. Leave them alone. It's fine." Because like in Roswell, there they would have balloons come down every once in a while. And sometimes those balloons had payloads on them, and it was a normal thing out there,
Mhm.
right? You're
Mhm.
near the Trinity Site. It's going to be a normal thing. And so, the person that they look up to the most
Mhm.
is telling them this isn't anything. Don't worry about it. Move on. Well, the more interesting thing is the kids don't necessarily listen to them. They start watching the site as they're cleaning it up. They're sneaking around out there with binoculars watching the site, according to their testimony.
Sure.
And they're watching the army come in and do this. And they said that a sergeant from the army actually came over and asked their father, they needed to bring this material off of the ranch, and they couldn't get it over the cattle gate. So
Mhm.
they wanted to breach the fence and create a gap in the fence so that they could get their lowboy or their whatever flatbed that they had coming out of there. And they actually ended up doing that. And that's how they got it off the property.
Mhm.
Which I find very interesting because you talk about time compression. They talked a lot about that. The Roswell report, the Air Force, when they did their report, they talked a lot about witness time compression of people seeing things in Roswell, people seeing things in and around Roswell that they believed was confused. Not at 1947, but maybe it was in 1956. And this
Mhm.
time just got compressed when this reminds me a little bit of that because there's these stories about in Roswell about the low boys or the flatbeds with tarps over them and pieces sticking out.
Right.
Well, that's what they describe here. So
Hmm.
I'm wondering if there was any time compression going on, maybe they were getting that confused if they took it all the way back to Roswell to ship it out someplace. I don't know. But I found that interesting with the whole story. But you're a little kid. Your father says it's nothing. This is normal. Don't worry about it. And you're like, but the praying mantis people,
Right. Yeah.
what's
Oh, it's
we got to go
normal.
look at this, right? We got to go look.
Right.
Well, when they go back, they're gone, but they're cleaning everything up, and they got binoculars on it. And for a moment, the site is unguarded. I can't imagine that happening, but they're way out in the middle of nowhere. They didn't have enough. Let's say your crew, you didn't have enough people. You're going to go have lunch, and the lunch was over there, and nobody was watching. Anyway, these two kids said that they snuck back over there and
Mhm.
actually got into the craft. But anyway, they collected two pieces of metal and ended up burying them there at their home. And then they ended up sharing them later. But anyway, they collected the metal back. So they actually submitted that metal for analysis, which I found pretty amazing. Because
So when
normally,
did they dig it up? How many years later?
I'm going to say 2015, something like that.
Wow.
I believe so. I believe so.
So the pieces were still there. They dug
Yeah,
them up. Do we
well,
have any
either.
analysis of what it was?
Oh yeah, yeah. See
Okay.
that was a. This is the only. You look at every. Well, not every. Okay, let me back up. The modern ones in the United States, you don't have pieces
Mhm.
of anything. All right.
Right.
So these guys said that these are pieces. One of them was found close to the crash site. The other one was found inside of the vehicle, and they pried it open with a crowbar. Frontier Analysis, they did a technical survey on that. It is the title is Subject Analysis of two metal parts purportedly from a crashed unidentified aerial object, San Antonio, New Mexico, August 16, 1945. This is submitted October 31st, 2015. It lists all the scientists that are involved in this thing. says the background of what we just talked about. It explains the case. The boys, Padilla and Baca, were out there looking for the cow. Around the periphery, they picked up a piece of thin, shiny material, which was folded up and lodged under a rock, reminiscent to the Roswell material, which had memory. They worked their way back to the wreckage, later approached and saw the entities inside. They end up leaving. They come back after the military left it for, it was just for a little short time. And they took advantage of it. They went in and they actually, the boys, it says, used a crowbar to get into it. So they did a spectral analysis of it and then some chemical tests on it. And the conclusions were the two metal samples have identical compositions. They are aluminum primary alloy to copper and silicon, small amounts of other traced metals. These alloys have a wide variety of uses. Some include engine crankcases, gas and oil tanks, engine oil pans, typewriter frames, all this stuff. So the isotopic ratios determined for nickel, copper, zinc compared to terrestrial values. So they're saying that these pieces of metal originated on Earth. Even though they say the ratios are terrestrial, extraterrestrial source of the metals is not ruled out for the following reasons. This is interesting. Hold on. It could be extraterrestrial because the aliens were time travelers and they're actually from Earth's future. So naturally, whatever they made was made here on Earth, right?
Sure. Right.
Or they could be have come here in another ship and be constructing subcraft that fly around and do their recons and stuff. They're little small missions, but the big ship is up there. So there's that possibility. And then there's physical processes that involve formation of elements on other planets would be just like ours, which is highly unlikely because the isotopes on it and the radiation that we receive and the degradation and all that stuff. So it's highly unlikely, but it's possible. And then finally, the metal could be from a terrestrial craft created by human beings. So it goes into what was coating the metal, smaller amounts of minerals and that sort of stuff. So I found that very interesting that we actually have this, and the scientists were open enough to suggest just because this stuff is created on Earth doesn't mean humans created it, or doesn't mean that current non-time traveling humans didn't create it that look like,
right,
praying mantis. Maybe
Sure.
we evolve into
That is the way we would evolve. It only makes sense.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get my head eaten off.
Well, geez. Let me first of all, Vicky Stone, one of our listeners in the chat room, going, you had that guy on a while ago with some artifacts. Why don't we have that guy back?
Yeah, why don't we? I want to see Mike's artifacts myself.
We're not gonna. Scott Walter was the guest that we had on. Let me just give you a little taste of what comes up in the next half an hour. Vicky Stone. We've got alien artifacts.
around,
Mike from aliencarvings.com is going to be with us. We're going to talk about these pieces, show you some of the artifacts. So these two pieces of metal that were dug up, Greg.
Yeah.
They were turned over, analyzed. Has the government, have they fallen aside? Have they disappeared? Are they any place we can see them?
Yeah, you can see them online. If you just go on Google, you can Google do frontier analysis, attach crashed identified or unidentified San Antonio, New Mexico kind of thing. Okay. It'll pop right up as a PDF. You can download it yourself, and it's open because they're not trying to hide anything on this. They're trying to dump as much as they can.
All right. Now, I know in Roswell, you're a lot more skeptical of the story being alien in nature because of how many people came forward 50 years later to talk about it. And that it seemed like there was a lot of bandwagon jumpers. A lot of stories did not seem to line up. When you look at the story from White Sands, these two boys telling the tale, what do you think? Was this an alien craft? Was this a test vehicle? Was this was there a rational explanation, in your opinion, from the information you've looked at,
Well,
analyzing and researching?
okay,
This?
there could be a rational explanation, but you got to look at these two guys. Baca grew up to be, he went in the Marine Corps and he was a staffer for Washington's governor, Dixie Lee Ray. She's like the 17th governor of Washington. I looked her up and just trying to figure out, because when you're looking at something and you're relying completely on circumstances and credibility of your witness, you have to qualify your witness. And a guy that was a staffer for a governor, it's important that his credibility be pretty much intact. You at least know that he's not going to go tell the secrets that he's hearing in the boardroom, right?
Right.
The other guy is a retired highway patrolman, and you can't trust cops. So there we go.
Wow.
Officers.
You can direct that email to Officer Greg Lawson, Detective Greg Lawson.
So he grew up and he was a state patrolman for 32 years, and then decides to come forward with this stuff later. I would say, the circumstances are right, and these two gentlemen, you have to decide whether or not you believe what their experience was. There was also there was an Air Force pilot that is reported by his family that he saw this, and he told them. And he ended up being a B-52 pilot later. I think he retired a lieutenant colonel or something. But yeah, so I love
sober, locked in, and focused Greg, but Friday night Greg is more fun. Wow. No, this is my paranormal detective work in here for us, folks. Man. I wanted somebody that could talk to us about this case, and he did the research. You got to put the book out, because Jacques Vallée is the last one I think that did a book really on the subject. It's time to get going.
I would think that somebody is doing one pretty soon. It was it's his book is Trinity, the Best Kept Secret. That's what it is.
Yeah, you'd like to think somebody else is, but let's just get on it, Greg. There's as a member of the Paranormal 60 News crew, it would help if you were the first one out with the new book. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to keep this low-paying job as a reporter for the show, it's time you start
72,000 words. Here we go.
Yeah,
Scrivener.
That's all. There you go.
I like the way that
stuff.
I like the way that you cropped my book and where my name's not on it at all. It's just, it's good. Throw it up.
Yes,
there,
it
man.
is. That is exactly.
Is it?
Yeah. Here, let me go back to it if I can find it here. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
It's where is it? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Boom.
Oh, look, no name on there at all. Look at that.
Do you know where I got this from?
What in the
Amazon.
world? They like forward Dave Schrader.
Amazon. I swear to God, that is the image that's on Amazon. I just copied and pasted.
Amazon.
So Roswell, the after action report.
That's right.
Forward by Dave Schrader, and we're not sure who the author of the actual book is.
Nope.
But I wrote the forward, and that should be enough reason.
That's all that matters.
Or you can get it because this guy actually wrote all the rest of the text. I mean, I helped him with the big words. If you've listened in on Friday, you'll understand that. Yeah. But it's a great book. Check it out. People can get it. If they go to your website, can they order directly from you?
If they sent me an email, they probably could. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and you can. There's an email connection right there. It says book Greg Lawson for your event. Yeah, you can just do that and say, hey,
it's on tonight's program guide. You can see the book right directly off Amazon, where you'll see that same photograph where there's no mention of Greg Lawson on his own book. Or you can go to his website, which is what, coldcasefiles.com.
It can be, or theparanormaldetective.com.
Oh, there's that too. Yeah, every time I type that in, it just pulls up the cold case files. I never pull
Isn't
up
that weird? Yeah,
it is very
paranormal detective.
.com. All right. So this in the pantheon of UFO stories, eyewitness accounts, exchanges, do you put this even more credible above Roswell being a UFO?
No. But this is really fascinating. I mean, if they didn't identify this material, when you pulled up this PDF of this report and you look at the picture of the material, I've seen things like that before. And so there's one that has some some markings on it, and I am a trained burglary investigator, and I know things about tool markings, and so looking at that, it's kind of like, I think I kind of know what that is, and I don't know whether aliens use those things or not. So that's one of those things, but that doesn't really necessarily mean anything. I find the circumstances very interesting. I find the witnesses very credible. And I find I'm going to look more into this this pilot that supposedly saw this and the damage to a radio tower. They called it a Marconi tower. How'd you like that? That's yeah. You say that to kids today, they don't know what that is. It's like, yeah, it's a radio tower.
Before I go to my next guest, I'm going to do an impromptu. Thank you, Loki, for the support on the show tonight with a super chat. Greg. Yes. I watched a movie last night in preparation for today because this is an impromptu upon further review. I don't even have a poster. I have no trailer for it. This is a movie I wanted to see when it came out, and then it escaped me. And then I just last night caught it on Peacock and got a chance to watch it. Shadow in the Clouds. Did you see that?
Shadow in the Clouds. I didn't know.
So
am I going to review it? Do I get to review it?
Chloe Grace Moretz. No, I said I'm doing an impromptu one right now, but I'd like you to watch it. Chloe Grace Moretz is in it. It's an interesting movie. It takes place during World War II in the 40s. And a woman comes aboard what is it, B-52 bomber or so, and they're making a cargo drop. And she comes aboard and high strangeness begins. It's got a very noir feel to it. And there's a lot of #MeToo moments in there because she's a woman that comes aboard the plane with a bunch of 1940s acid. Anyway, she begins to see things and experience things which kind of are reminiscent of the William Shatner Twilight Zone episode.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah, okay. Terror at 20,000 feet or something.
Yeah,
but it just goes off the rails. It is definitely touching on the Twilight Zone, aliens, and more. I really like this movie. I thought it was a clever, fun little movie. Came out in 2020. And I get a feel that they really filmed a lot of this during COVID because it was very minimalistic, like Alien, where you kind of put people in this one little ship and everything is claustrophobic. You've got the same kind of vibe going, only they're dealing with possible gremlins, the historic gremlins that would do things. I will say this.
Shadow in the Clouds.
1 out of 5 Phantoms. 1, it sucks. 5 is an amazing movie. Although it's not necessarily alien in nature, it is definitely a fun movie. I'm going to give this a solid 3 3/4 Phantoms. Just a hair under 4 because I felt like there was a few things they cheated. It's a short movie. It's only like 88, maybe 88 minutes long. So they didn't even ask you to commit to a full hour and a half. And it moves pretty well for what it's doing. 3 3/4 stars. Get a chance to watch Shadow in the Clouds. And please, folks, if you're watching the YouTube video at any time, come back and tell me what you think of that movie. All right?
All right.
All right. Good deal. Greg, thank you as always, buddy. We'll see you on Friday with more Paranormal 60 news.
My pleasure. Thanks, man.
All right. And again, check out the websites, the links, and the information for our guest because it goes a long way. And just stay tuned because you thought that Scott Walter had some interesting artifacts. Our next guest from Alien Carvings has brought some images for us to look at and review, and something at the end that'll blow you away. That's coming up next right here on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. I'm Dave Schrader. This is the Paranormal 60.
Hey, it's Chris Jericho here, just reminding you about the 4-leaf clover. Chris Jericho's rock and wrestling rager at sea, the 4th voyage, leaving February 2nd from Miami to Great Stirrup Key, our very own private island. This is going to be the biggest and best Jericho cruise ever, with the biggest lineup, the most fun. I guarantee it. Come join us for the vacation and the party of a lifetime. ChrisJerichoCruise.com. Cabin's still available. I want to see you there.
Haunted Magazine is packed full of the paranormal, stuffed with the supernatural, sautéed with spookiness, garnished with ghosts, and even drizzled with a dash of demons. If you want histories, mysteries, ghost stories, hauntings, weird stuff, freaky stuff, and more supernatural than you can shake a stick at, come and see Haunted Magazine for the world's best paranormal writers. Visit www.hauntedmagazineprintshop.com for your latest scare. Remember kids, don't be normal, be paranormal.
Hello, my lovely little darklings. The Paranormal 60 t-shirts are here. You've been begging for them. We've got them. It's got the Paranormal 60 logo on the front. You get 4 different backs to choose from. Don't scare me, I poop easily. Quickly, one of these top-selling shirts. We've also got Words is Hard, our Friday night moniker. Friday, or back number 3 is Darkling, so you can prove that you are a listener and one of my little darklings by having the shirt bearing the image on the front, the name on the back, and our final one, Paranormal Talk Radio, with the website logo underneath it as well. So if you would like to help support the show, you would like to get your own t-shirt, all you have to do is email me, dave@paranormal60.com. That's dave@paranormal60.com. The t-shirts are $25 to $30 depending on size, and shipping is $8 to $12 depending on how many shirts you buy. So if you're interested, email me, dave@paranormal60.com. Include your name, your shipping address, your email address, and what size shirt you want, how many shirts you want, and which design you'd like for the back. So that's as simple as it can be. We will send you out an invoice. Once you pay it, we will process it. Shirts are beginning to ship this week. So if you get your order in, you may have it within the next 2 weeks here. So think about that if you're interested. I'd love to see you wearing your love for the Paranormal 60, especially as I'm going to be out traveling the world this year. I'd love to see you out there with me. All right, folks, I gave you a little taste in the last segment when we were talking with Greg of an artifact we're going to show. And he's on today's banner as well. Weird, very strange. And this is only one half of him. We're going to get to see the backside as well in a bit. But first, it's interesting how cyclical life is, right? Like the 2 boys in the story we just heard, the friends at a young age coming back into each other's lives later to share something. I get a message from a friend, Greg Joyner, who I had not thought about, talked to, or heard in probably 40 years. And he's like, Dave, you're doing paranormal stuff. You got to talk to my buddy. He has got some amazing alien artifacts. And I said, all right, let's do this. We put together, it's been a struggle trying to find a date and a time, but he is here. Last year, we got a chance to sit down with Scott Walter from America Unearthed, one of my favorite people and favorite guests and a good friend. He showed some of the pieces he had in his collection. Joining me now, Mike Forrest from aliencarvings.com. And Mike, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we've got a lot of images to go through, a lot of story to go through. And I like, for people watching the video, you get kind of a nice little background of Mike on this and see some of the artifacts and photographs. And you take beautiful pictures, by the way, Mike.
Thank
These
you.
are museum quality pieces. The pictures I showed with Scott Walter, I felt bad, were just taken with my cell phone. You've sent me all of these gorgeous images of artifacts and items that you've got. While we're talking about these artifacts and your work in getting them, I'm just going to pop some up. You don't feel you have to explain or talk about each image. But the first one I did like that I wanted to pop up is very Tutankhamun-esque, right? You've got this interesting sarcophagus looking image with a very gray alien face head on it. Obviously, they know how to do black because they've pinstriped this piece and inlaid it. We always talk about the aliens, and especially these gray aliens, having kind of dark jet black almond eyes, yet most of the pieces all seem to have kind of a clear eye effect. Do you think that's a choice? Do you think that maybe they were witnessing a different version if these were aliens during this time? What do you think they were doing by sharing these pieces?
Yeah, it really it seems like it connects to, Genesis 6 in the Bible, where, supposedly they came down and bared children with our women and stuff like that. And Genesis is pretty consistent throughout many different ancient texts like the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff like that. It's pretty consistent to our modern version today, and so that's something that really hasn't changed. And something I started seeing these pieces, like the back of it there, it's got a Sumerian looking, bearded gentleman on there, and started seeing a lot of different connections to ancient civilizations, not just from Egypt or Sumeria, but all over the world. And that was pretty strange to see from Mexico.
Right. So yeah, how did you get connected with these pieces and start working on and recovery for them?
Well, my good friend Caleb, he was down at the Tucson Gem Show, and I've collected rocks and minerals my whole life, and carvings especially, and so he was down there. And my wife, she cuts opals, so he brought back a bunch of stuff and wanted to come over and show me. And he's showing me all these rocks, and then bust out these carvings at the end. And I was like, wow, those are pretty unique, and they're the same type of stuff that Scott showed on your show from Abuelos
Mhm.
de Jalisco. And they've got a really distinct look, and I wanted to know more about them. And he tried telling me that they were ancient, out of the ground. And I'm like, these would be all over the news. This can't be real, and he refused to let it go. So I decided to research it and try to prove it and debunk it,
Mhm.
ask around. I talked to, Linda Moulton Howe and a few different people in the industry, and just tried to get some disclosure or information about them. And yeah, well, here I am now. I've documented over 20,000 of these pieces. And I went from Abuelos de Jalisco and some of the families down there that were gathering these pieces, and I asked them if there were some larger pieces. I wanted to see if there was large statues or anything like that, and they directed me to Tula Hidalgo, to a gentleman there. And that's when things really started to get strange. I mean, the stuff, the type of stone that it was being used. I mean, I have a table that weighs 420 pounds. It's 5 pieces. And I mean, it's completely covered in relief carving from top to bottom, underneath, in the sides. It's remarkable. Yeah, that's it right there. And it glows in the UV too. The entire table, just different colors, yellows and blues and greens. And it's just, to make that out of a carving, it's pretty interesting. And so
Right.
we had a chemist look into the mineral analysis of this type of stone. And what was strange, it's a dominant calcite and quartz. And it almost seems like it's pressed. That he said it doesn't look like a naturally occurring crystal structure that he had seen. And so it almost makes sense. A lot of these, there's large bowls and dishes and things that would be really, really hard to carve out of stone unless you were pressing it wet.
Okay. But then does that take us into the fact that maybe they found old pieces that date back, that they've warmed and then put these etchings into, so that the piece dates back to hundreds or thousands of years ago, but the carvings and everything that we're seeing on them now, the reliefs are more recent?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things like patina and stuff like that you can look at with a microscope. We have a section on our website that I've devoted for microscopic photos, and I've taken thousands of pictures, and you can see there's definite patina and buildup and erosion in these grooves. The grooves are not consistent in terms of a Dremel or symmetrical. They're very uneven in that sort of sense, almost as if they were hand done on the Abuelo stuff that's like shown here. But then the
Mhm.
relief is perfect. There's no tooling marks whatsoever, and it's inconsistent even to what we'd be able to do today, in my opinion, modernly. So to do that, especially out of quartz and calcite combination like that is not something I've ever seen, you know.
Now, you said that some of these pieces fluoresce under black light, and you've got to have a high level spectrum black light to get them to pop with these colors. I thought it was interesting. If it's the same stone, why are some fluorescing in blues or purples, some in greens? There's some reds, it appears, in a couple of these. Is that because of spray that you're putting on there to let the relief be seen, or is it just naturally occurring?
No, that's the way that they were found, and they sold me these pieces down there and had no idea they had fluorescence at all. My wife, you know, she does glass blowing as well, and so they have different types of glass that you can get, like uranium glass, that you use a black light and it glows very beautifully. And so we had that, and one day we were sitting at the table, and we hit a couple of these with it to see if anything would happen, and we saw phosphorescence first of all, and they were on the Abuelos pieces. And so we started to test multiple Abuelos pieces. Every one of them had some sort of phosphorescence, and some of it was geologically inconsistent in terms that it was only in the carving lines, whereas some of like you see there with the luminescence, but as a phosphorescence as well. And so we tested more and more, and I asked the guys down there in Mexico if they had ever seen this, and they hadn't. So I sent a couple lights down, and they started testing their collections. And everything. I mean, every one of these pieces almost, 9 out of 10 at least, have some sort of reaction to the UV.
All right, but that's a natural effect of these stones, right? I was talking to Scott Walter about it, and in some cases, these are natural elements that this is just what the stone does under certain circumstances. Right.
Calcite in general, it has a lot of different UV reactions, red and stuff like that. But in this case, you know, like on that table that's being shown, each one of those grooves has been inlaid, and there's different types. Some of it's a powder, some of it's a paint, it almost looks like, some of it's a goop that hardens like a rock, and it varies from piece to piece, and each piece just, it was definitely put on some of them, like the one being shown, but there's no trace of any spray or any sort of paint or anything like that you can see visibly, like in the blue section there. It just looks like stone.
Right, and that's a scarab, as Donna C points out. Where was this piece found? That's definitely a winged scarab in the center, right? It was the first thing I looked at this, and I'm like, is this just one of Journey's albums under a black light? You know, you've got that look, but it's interesting because many of these things have an Egyptian overtone to them, but they're coming from an area where you wouldn't have thought that, right? You would have been more what the Aztec and Incan and Mayan cultures, right?
And
so
the
I'm going to
dates
keep
on
popping
these
some of these up as we keep going. So go ahead.
Yeah, we've seen numerous carbon dates as well as the thermoluminescent dating on ceramics, and the dates are consistent. You know, 8 to 15,000 years ago. There's been a few tests even up to 20,000 years that we've seen. And they're testing the adhesives as well as underneath the inlays. There's precious minerals and stuff inlaid for the eyes a lot of times. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense to be Mayan or anything if it predates it by that much. I mean, even the Olmec, this is like 5,000 years before that even. So
now here's an interesting piece that it almost appears that it's showing two coexisting versions of beings. Reptilian, it appears, on one side, the gray or the more traditional alien look on the other side, and then you've got some of the Aztecian and Mayan looking imagery and etchings that are shared with throughout this piece.
Yeah, this piece is a great example because, as you could see at the top, you've got the Egyptian Anubis. You see a lot of DNA strands and different types of things. And that's one thing that.
How about that UFO craft? Yeah, the UFO craft at the top of this thing flying across the sky.
Yeah. And it almost looks similar to the one. I don't know if you're familiar with the painting there that shows the two. It's like a religious painting from. It's quite old. I think 1400s.
Right, the crucifixion of Christ, where it shows the sun. What some people believe to be the representation of the sun and the moon in the sky, but there are two beings inside of them.
Right.
Using joysticks and throttles to move.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting pieces. Now, when you start getting pieces like this brought in, this has got to be a thrill, because it's a thrill just to look at the photographs of these images. And
this one specifically.
Yeah.
I had to know, I bought this because it has a ring in there and it's metal. So I wanted to immediately know. We took it over to the XRF gun and had it analyzed. What's crazy about that ring is it has quite a bit of rhodium in it, which is off to find. I mean, rhodium's extremely
Right.
expensive. I think it's 5 or 6 times the price of gold. So
Mhm.
to find that unrefined in a piece like that is unlikely if it's someone modern creating a piece of jewelry. It was silver, zinc, and rhodium is the combination of that.
And these are interesting aliens. Again, you've got kind of the bug-like look to them. The two that are flying on both sides. You've got one that's got kind of the mantis head. Another one almost looking kind of Cthulhu-like.
Yeah.
And I saw there were some of the images. I couldn't get all of them, folks. He sent me over 100 images. We can't show them on all the show tonight, but he does have photographs on his website of many of these pieces and many more that you can go and examine for yourself as well. But they're just stunning. When you're getting these things, do you start to have a concern that are you dealing with an antiquity, a piece that maybe you shouldn't own? And I don't mean to sound like I'm throwing you under the bus here, Mike, but
It absolutely, at first, I customs and stuff opened the pieces, and I thought for sure, if this was antiquities or anything like that, that it would be immediately seized or something like that. But they've opened probably 80% of my packages and looked at them. I've seen a 6-page letter from 2016 from the archaeology and anthropology department in Mexico. I've got it posted on our website that states anything showing a UFO or an alien is not consistent to Mayan or Incan or any civilizations of Mesoamerica, and it has to be modern. And that's their conclusion as a government and as the antiquities. So it's legal to buy and sell these pieces, which is how Scott has them and how I have them. But it's just strange because there's certain things that are inconsistent with modern reproductions that I'm used to seeing, that these display so many techniques. For instance, I'll show you something like this mosaic here. This is a turtle. And this is all different pieces of stone put together to make this. The top is just glued together of hundreds of different stones. And the amount of arts and crafts to go into this is just crazy. It's got the little figures inside that are all detailed. I've got over 500 of these little figures that are under 1 centimeter a piece, and every one of them is unique completely. Like they're all completely individualized, which is unique too. If these were being mass produced, you would see some sort of duplicates or some sort of style that was consistent and repeated. And in this case, it's absolutely original on every piece down to the littlest little ones,
Now, being as anal as he is about the detail, I know that Scott has gone through these pieces that he's collected with a fine-tooth comb, looking at every hieroglyph and registering them. What he's finding is that there's none that are repeated. So it's not like a known type language. Are you seeing that on the pieces that you have? Are there repeated pieces, or are they all individually?
The Abuelos language is completely unique in itself, and there's tens of thousands of symbols that we found. We found some that do repeat. I do have a specific symbol that repeats on many pieces that I have. So I think there's certain things, maybe identifying planets or stars or something like that, where it's a consistent symbol for that meaning. And
you're sure that's not the maker's mark from China where they're producing these?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. No,
and I'm not trying to be a jerk on this, but you just look at it and you're like, God, these things are amazing. There's no way that these are ancient artifacts. But like you said, different testing on the gems, the adhesives. I know Scott has done testing on the adhesives on pieces he's got that are dating back 6,000 to 10,000 to 12,000 years old for the adhesives.
Yep. And there's argument that you could use petroleum modern adhesives to date something older than it was. But the thing is, when you do that, it's to hit that date range consistently on such a small level with the carbon scale. I mean, that would be a miracle in my opinion, because a lot of those petroleum adhesives are millions of years old. So to get that 10,000 range seems unlikely. And then also to prove that you knew that it was going to be in that range, you would have to have a full lab setup to test the hoax pieces just to make sure they fell in that range. And that's just that's so much work doesn't make sense, you know. The
Agreed.
gold on these pieces as well, like when you hit it with the XRF, it's not a consistent pure gold. The alloys range. Some of them have silver, some of them have zinc, some of them are 14 karat, some of them are 12 karat, and it's different on every piece of gold on these things, which is meaning it was unrefined when they pounded it out, you know.
Right. All right. So now this is, of course, the guy that appears on our banner, and I thought was fascinating. He definitely alien looking in nature, the way he's represented, the imagery on him. Let's take a look at his backside. Again, interesting representations, and that is undeniably a UFO craft on the back of his head.
Yeah, and Saturn.
Right? Oh, and Saturn. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and just the intricacy. The pictures I've got here, folks, are lower quality than the ones he sent me because I couldn't put up 25 megabyte pictures on each one. My system here just would not tolerate it, but I wanted to give you a view of some of these pieces. And again, another mosaic design with what looks like a DNA helix in the middle by his nose, many different representations. But now it could be said, right, in some of these cases, like the DNA helix looks to be a much newer piece. Like it could have been something that was added recently. Do we look because it is mosaic and there are different pieces that are attached at different times? Do we know from the scratchings of the adhesives on any of these pieces what kind of dating we're looking at?
Yeah, they are consistent. That specific mosaic hasn't been tested yet. It's really hard to get labs to take this seriously because they put their name on the line, and you
Right.
know, if they're wrong or say something not proper, it's not good. And you know, a lot of pieces, like if you look at the Grand Canyon with Kincaid and the Smithsonian back in the early 1900s, Kincaid came out and said he found all these caves and Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon. And then all of a sudden, a few days later, after the press came out, you know, Smithsonian took all that back. But it's interesting to hear that because the stuff that they describe, giants and Egyptian symbols and stuff like that, this is all really consistent with the stuff we're finding. And I don't think that's an accident.
All right. Again, some more of the pieces that we're showing as we go along. Another one that seems to be a knitted together image of a reptilian and a gray with a double helix going down the middle of it. So you're seeing the combination of the two different beings and different culture decorative pieces on them as well. Obviously, some Egyptian, Incan, and Mayan looking designs that you're seeing represented on these pieces. This one caught my attention as well for the phosphorus glow of it and the strange shape of the skull that you've got. What can you tell us about this piece?
Yeah, well, I've got it right here. I can show you. It's a quartz skull that was found in Tula, Hidalgo, and you know, it's got a lot of stuff very consistent with the angels and Saturn and the DNA, as well as the all-seeing eye on many of these pieces. And I think
now they
that's
can actually
something-
look into crystal like that to see how it was created, how it was tooled. Are you seeing any tool, any etchings like the crystal skulls, the famous crystal skulls that are out there?
Yeah, like Einstein and stuff like that. You know, there's contradiction on that because, you know, they can see that it was polished, you know, with something, but to actually see how long it was carved, it's pretty impossible. I think there's no consistent way to say, yeah, this was carved a long time ago. They debunked Einstein and stuff like that, but like Mitchell Hedges' skull, for instance, I mean, that's pretty documented of being found legitimately. So it's hard to say. And that one that they came up with the same conclusion as Einstein. So it's hard to say.
Okay, so do you look into the skull's eyes and get visions? Do you pick up anything? Is there any kind of energetic stamping or release from this?
Yeah, we have a tri-field meter that we test, and there's a lot of weird inconsistent electromagnetic frequencies that come out of these pieces. And like the different pyramids and stuff like that, they seem to be almost tuned to a specific electromagnetic frequency. And as far as the energy and stuff like that, when I do photos of a lot of these pieces at once, it's actually extremely overwhelming. And I thought that was just me, and I'm sitting in front of all these pieces, and it's overwhelming to think about what they possibly could be. And but I had like my mom come over, and I wanted to show her, as I'm taking these pictures, and she came up there and she started complaining. She's like, I gotta go sit down, and I'm not feeling right. I get wishy-washy in the head. And I mean, it was literally the description of how I felt. And that's weird, unbiased to have her say the same thing. So there's definitely something. And I've sold some of these pieces to people, and there's definitely a weird energy. Yeah.
Donna says that DNA helix was also on that alien human hybrid like figurine too. Right. It's been on a lot of the different pieces that we've looked at. Again, if you're listening to the audio representation of this program, I hope that you're getting enough kind of visual representation through our descriptions, but please go check out the video. If you only just go watch the last half an hour of this to see the photographs, to see these images, and then we do have links to Mike's website. And Mike, you do make some of these pieces available for purchase, correct?
Yeah, I bought almost 550 pieces before I ever sold a single one. And my wife was starting to get a little frustrated. I had a storage unit and multiple safes and stuff all over the house, and some of it needed to be sold. And yeah, so we do sell some after we're done researching it, but some of the pieces still have a lot of research, so I can't, even think about selling something like that.
So here we're looking at all these different pieces that have carved skulls, and then I find in the last batch of photos that you send me, we have something very unique. Is this stone or is this skull?
No, it's a bone. It only weighs. It's really, really lightweight. I mean, you can see it's definitely a bone. There's suture lines. You can see them. I mean, it's definitely not something that was doctored or manufactured. The Rhodope Mountains in Bulgaria back in 2001, they actually found a piece like this, and they documented it quite well. And it went missing when they sent it in for DNA testing, and so it was never.
Now this also has some carvings on it.
Yeah, carving and it luminesces and it phosphorescences as well. So the entire face, you put the black light up here and turn it off, and you can still see it glowing, as well as the top of it here is completely. You can see the green.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and for it to phosphoresce like that is really bizarre. It's lighter weight than our bone is, or any bone that I've ever handled before. So it's something that I really hope to get tested or investigated at some point. We have two of them, so one of them I'm going to go bury and hopefully send the other one out and get some good testing.
Right. So when you have something like this, how is it that you're not getting at the door from somebody that wants to investigate this a little further?
I've actually kept myself anonymous until now because I've been scared about that. You read about all these things and hear about all these things, even just with the Roswell investigations and people going missing. And, it's really scary trying to raise a family and to do something like that, to post all this out there. But it follows this alien agenda. And I think that a lot of these pieces display angels and these type of beings that are biblically correct, terms of like before the fall of Babel and the great flood. Supposedly God got rid of people that were here, or the many species before, because they worshiped their gods with stone idols. And it's interesting to think that these angels might have came here, like the Titans or the Nephilim and Anunnaki. They may have convinced these civilizations that with all this technology and intelligence that they were God, even though they were actually the fallen angels, and they deceived man for however long. And they may be trying to do it again with disclosure and the aliens coming back. Maybe they're trying to convince us that that's God, and even though it's not. And so I don't know. It's really strange. I wasn't at all religious prior to this. Biblically, it's made me go deep into research, Nag Hammadis and Dead Sea Scrolls and the Pistis Sophia, stuff like that, where it's this stuff lines up identically to that, and it's quite scary.
Raymond Lancashire asks, are there any paranormal experiences with any of the pieces that you have in your collection?
No contact yet. Yeah, nothing of note in that respect, other than just strange energies, wishy-washy head. Nothing of note though. Any beings or anything like that.
Okay, amazing. Now, is this something that you continue to bring over, more of these artifacts, more of these pieces?
I haven't actually brought in any for about 4 months now. I really wanted to take the time to get the research done. I'm going to write a book and try to document this the best I can. And so collecting the pieces became overwhelming. Like I said, I got 550 of them, and to keep up on that research and keep pushing forward was tough. There are still pieces being unearthed, but a majority of them came out when they did a bunch of GPR and stuff. Gen 6 Productions, Steve Quayle's company, they went down there and did a huge expedition, and there's a massive documentary coming out on Tula Hidalgo specifically that'll detail all the digs. I mean, the 20-foot holes that they dug, and it's all right to the right of the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl there in Tula Hidalgo. So,
and they're uncovering these pieces, these alien artifacts, right there on site in front of cameras. So this isn't something that
4K
wow.
drone footage, everything. They went to extreme lengths to document it.
What do you want to leave our listeners and viewers with as they see these pieces, hear your stories? Is this something, I mean, do you believe that this is proof that our cultures are a blend of different beings from different planets? Do you think that these are pieces that are what was once referred to as the gods in all of these locations? Where's
gods
your
with
thinking
a lowercase g, I think, and
right.
these imposter gods and these angels and stuff. I mean, it's interesting. I guess just keep asking questions and don't be sold on anything until you're sure. I'm not even sure. I still continue research, and I mean, I can't say for surely this stuff is legitimate, but I've seen it come out of the ground. I've seen numerous types of testing. I've gone to extensive lengths myself, and there's still so many questions that I have. So I just got to keep asking questions on this topic so we get some answers.
Well, I'll wait for the crate you send to my house to go through so I can, analyze them myself. I don't want to brag, but I do have an erector set and a microscope from when I was 12. So maybe I can figure out something on these. Mike, amazing pieces, great stories, great history. Thank you for being a purveyor of history and continuing to keep pieces like this so that they don't fall, or get destroyed, because I would guess that, is it surprising to you that they're not blocking these things from leaving Mexico? Or do you think just in the disavowing of the imagery, they think that's enough to say, hey, this isn't real?
Well, we've uncovered about 250 false pieces, and a lot of them model after the ones that were found. It took about 6 months for them to come out. There's, certain pieces with plastic or glass on them that we were easily able to identify as false. But what's interesting about that is the people down there say that the cartel and the government are actually producing these pieces and letting real pieces go out of the back door that have been turned in, etc., and that they're trying to cover up the fact that these are real and trying to swipe it under the rug and make it all seem like it's fake, even though there are real ones involved. And it's crazy to think that.
Disinformation,
yeah, with all the top secret stuff in this world, I wouldn't doubt it, I guess.
No, amazing stuff. Mike Forrest, we have a link up for your website, aliencarvings.com, correct? Just so I'm not looking at the website right now. Okay, aliencarvings.com. Yep. People can go see what you're documenting, what you're sharing, your information there, and some of the pieces that you do have for sale.
Yeah, absolutely. Our TikTok or Instagram too at Alien Carvings. We post a lot of videos there that aren't on the website and that go into extreme detail about all this stuff.
Excellent. Well, I got to see it. I got to come out and visit and see these pieces for myself. If you don't mind, sometime we'll have to make that happen.
Sure. Absolutely.
Maybe we'll get Greg out there and we'll have a reunion of sorts. So thank you again, Mike Forrest. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Amazing stuff, folks. The world as we know it is still a mystery, an enigma, a riddle that continues to challenge us and challenge our paradigm. Where do we fit in the cosmic scheme of things? Are we the alpha on this planet, or are there others that are still here, hidden in plain sight? Interesting to think about, interesting to talk about. And thank you for sharing your journey with me and allowing me to bring just a little light into the darkness of the topics of these programs. Be safe and keep your eyes to the skies, because you might be the next to see one of the most remarkable, unbelievable, and shareable experiences of your life. Until Friday, we'll be back with more of the best in paranormal news with my paranormal news crew right here on the Paranormal 60.